Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Obus form here on the new channel, Obus Focus. Today's tournament video is going to be from Bracket A. It's going to be Evster versus antlr. As you guys know, Evster is one of the community member players, and antlr is co-running the tournament with me. Don't worry, there's no bias. I'm actually not playing. I would just be reviewing and making the videos. And before we get started, as you guys know, tournament number 6 is the first tournament ever since the launch of Spellslingers, but right now this tournament is being played on patch 1.01. Quick side note, tournament number 6 is rules are best 2 out of 3, and players may not reuse a planeswalker if they won with that planeswalker in that specific round. So if you have won with Drizzt on your first game, you may not use Drizzt in the second or the third game. But we are seeing with the Drizzt aggro, which reminds me of like the Nahiri aggro way back in the beta days, you know, when her Stoneforge Blade was +2 damage starting off and it was permanent and games were ending in 4 to 6 turns. So Drizzt does remind me a little bit of that aggro, but the meta has adapted to that hard aggro. So we are seeing like more aggro, Liliana. We are still seeing Jace and Nissa, right? Thanks to some of those class mythic cards. We are seeing them able to last to the end game. We are always seeing, you know, more Ajani, but more like control with the grudge matches, with the blind sides, right? Stuff like that to control maybe the early aggro. We are seeing, of course, Domri. Domri has always been sort of, you know, high meta, not like meta like, you know, Rao was in patch 1.01 or Drizzt in Rao was in 1.0 or Drizzt in 1.01, but you know, Domri has always been there by just filling the board with 5 creatures. It's always been effective against most planeswalkers. We are seeing some ingenuity also with Control Kaya, maybe even some Control Nahiri, and of course some aggressive early control, you know, with just the Vraska value of finales. So we are seeing a lot of ingenuity. So I do want to get started with today's match, but before we do, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to our community admins and mods. We have Ezra, we have myself, and we have Jeremy, capital J. And also I want to thank antlr for helping me co-run and co-organize and answer all the myriad questions and helping people, you know, find their opponents and their names and all that stuff and just going through logistics. None of us on either Discord, the tournament or the, you know, the unofficial official Discord, none of us get paid. It's all just done through, you know, because of our enjoyment of the game. And we just kind of sit there at our computer and, you know, monitor the Discord as it comes. So I hope you guys enjoy what we're doing. Please do leave a like, comment, subscribe, and with that, we're gonna get started with round number 1. Alright, so game number 1 is going to be Evster on Nissa, rocking that healing land that has 30% chance to proc at turn, I believe it's number 6, versus antlr on Domri, rocking that, it's that red fountain. I believe it has the 40% chance, it's the only land, actually, that has a 40% chance to proc and draw him another card. It looks like Evster on Nissa is rocking that class card, the Druid. As you guys know, class cards give you 3 cards. As long as you play the first one, the second one comes within the top 3. Okay, so we can tell that Evster with the haste and also the wizard's spell book. So it looks like it's going to be the hasten, that new Strahd legendary. It's a 10 mana, 10/10 flying, and when you cast it, it will make everyone's HP at 10. So it's probably going to be hasten. That's probably Nissa's endgame. And we do see wizard's spellbook. It's now a draw 2 cards instead of the Wizard's Tomb, the 4 mana one. So we do see 2 out of the 6. In any case, Evster on turn 2. So actually, Domri turn 1 plays the Hasty Goblin, does attack, doesn't get blocked. So Evster turn 2 on Nissa does cast the Wolf, the 3/2 Wolf, which is the level 1 class card of the Druid. So Domri turn number 2. He could do the Goblin Shortcutter, and that way it just, you know, shortcuts the 3/2, but nope, he decides to go for the attack. Maybe he's going to cast the Overgrown Iguana instead. Okay, so Evster doesn't block, I think because he wants the 3 damage wolf to block something that has 3 HP, so we'll see what that does. If it does have a chance, blocking things like Colonian Tusker. So Evster on turn number 3 is going to play the I guess the Elvish Ranger, and the Elvish Ranger, as you guys know, so he does get the plummet, but if I'm being honest, I don't think Domri is known for having anything flying whatsoever, so that's not going to happen. In any case, so Antler on Domri, turn number 3, he does play Sword Cannoneer. Maybe he's gonna go for the Shortcutter, to shortcut the 3-2, or he could do the Azure Pyromancer. But if I'm being honest, Nissa at turn number 5, it might be a Sylvan Shrine, it might just, not really be, it might just be a body to block. So usually Nissa's on turn number 5, rather, on 4 mana, which is going to be turn 4, is not going to play too much, maybe just a body, right, like General Eldamri, or something like a Jiraga Druid just to block. So I don't know of having that Pyromancer, so he does have the Azure Pyromancer. It's better against maybe like Jace or like White Splash, going for those 7 mana heals from the Second Sun, 7 heals from the Eminent Archangel. In any case, Evster Nissa on turn number 4 with the mana gem could do the Barkhide, yeah. So he does gain the 1 empty mana gem, does give him 1 life, but doesn't give him 1 life thanks to that Azure Pyromancer. So we do see that 1 value there. He does give the, it does give the +1/+1 randomly, gives it to the Birds of Paradise, does the attack, but I don't think that really matters. We do see the Day of Judgment in Evster's hand. Hopefully Antler on Domri won't play the Zozu, because he can sort of, you have to sort of expect that Nissas usually do have something like maybe 2 Day of Judgments and or 2 Lava Waves. So anyways, Antler does play the Zozu. In my experience, you never really want to do that. You want to force out a, full board control with Domri, but you save your Zozu after turn 7 or after the first Day of Judgment or Lava Wave is played. That way it forces them to play a second one against Nissa, because Nissa doesn't have any easy board clears. In any case, so he does play the Zozu. It does get chump blocked. The 2-3 and the 2-3, 3-2 and 2-3 do get trade even Stevens. And as a result, Nissa does take 4 damage. And, okay, so he does commit hard to board pressure. So I think if you're going to do the Zozu, you don't have to commit to that kind of board pressure, because Zozu himself is going to end the game on the next attack with the, 6 mana, right? So, okay, so he does say not bad. And okay, so the Molten Monastery does proc, very good. And okay, so Antler does get a card he can play. So yeah, Colonian Tusker for sure. Maybe the second Colonian Tusker, there we go. Doesn't need to play the Goblin Shortcutter, because, I mean, there's nothing to block. No value there. All right, so very well done. So it looks like at least Antler on Domri can recover, but Sacred Sanctum does proc. It's sort of the anti-aggro land. Unfortunately, I think Evster, yeah, he does get the draw to, okay, he does get a second Wizard Spellbook. So we see 3 of the 6 cards on Evster. We do see the 2 Wizard Spellbook and the Hasten. I think the Hasten is such a hard tell for either having extremely late game, the Sign of Ashaya to just one-shot attack, or that new legendary Strahd, or Istrahd or whatever, to make everyone 10 life and then immediately attack because it's flying. So in any case, Antler does play the 3/3 Haste Minotaur. He does attack with everything, right? There's no need for Goblin Shortcutter. And he does get 7 damage, bringing Nissa down to 12. And okay, so Domri again commits hard to board pressure. But let's see on 7 mana or 8 mana. Yeah, you don't want to cast the Warboar in case he has the Lava Wave. No, okay. He gets Sign of Ashai, but maybe use Wizard Spellbook. Do you get another one? Draw 1. And draw 2. No. Oh, okay. Luckily, yeah, you do get your class card. Probably going to play the Wild Shape Brontosaurus just to sponge some damage. As you guys know, Wild Shape Brontosaurus, it does provide a body to block. It heals itself for 2, but really what you want it for is because every time you take damage, the Wild Brontosaurus takes the damage instead. So interestingly enough, even if the Wild Brontosaurus only has 1 HP, it can block, or rather you can take an attack of like 10 damage to the face, and because it only has 1 HP, it will take that entire 10 damage and just kill the Wild Brontosaurus. So that's an interesting way to maximize the life value of the wild-shaped Brontosaurus. So yeah, maybe block the 4/3, that's 4 damage, right? And then we'll see. So yeah, so 4 damage, it gets the -4. And so only 2 HP left, but yeah, Evster doesn't take that 1 damage. There we go. So that's a very interesting way to maximize that wild Brontosaurus, but that's too bad. So Evster really needs to draw his second, Day of Judgment. Yeah, so Antler's playing very smart. He's not playing Goblin Field Rusher. He's not playing the War Boar. He's just committing to board pressure. And I think Evster, he needs to play like a Sign of Ashaya. I don't know if that Wizard Spellbook, I mean, you're only going to have 3 mana left over. You really need to, like draw a, or at least play. Too bad. He really needed a, I think he just needed like a Lava Wave, a Day of Judgment, or sort of just his early game blockers, because none of his stuff, with Hasten and Plummet and all that stuff, doesn't really sort of help him win more or control anything. So I think that's going to be game. Yeah, so Antler attacks with everything, even if Evster blocks the 4/3, it's going to be 3, 6, 9. It's going to be exactly 9 damage coming through. It's going to be the end of game number 1. So Evster's doing the math. It's hard to do math in video games. I don't blame you. I usually count all my fingers and toes. I actually flex my toes to be able to count them during the games, so I can count up to 20. But yeah, so Evster does take the 3, 6, 9. There we go. And just like that, Domri has won on basically, I think it's turn 9, because his land procced twice. Very well done. And with that, we're going to go into game number 2. All right, game number 2 is going to be Antler playing the most meta Drizzt, rocking that new land, the Yawning Portal. I think it's like turn 6 or 7, has a 30% chance to give you a random legendary, and it doesn't draw you a card anymore, but it will give you an empty mana gem. So they went back to sort of the old mechanic. Anyways, Evster is still playing that good Nissa deck that we know without seeing the level 10 mana Strahd, having seen the Hasten. I think that's his 1-turn KO Nissa deck. Anyways, so Nissa does go first, and it looks like he has the Rampant Growth, the Blind Side. So he has a spell, and there we go. Okay, so we do get the Birds of Paradise, lucky him. Hopefully Birds of Paradise can block something well, and therefore it can trigger the Tarmogoyf to get more stuff to make it a 4/5 at least. So turn 1, Antler blows his mana gem, casts Xander Split the Clever, so that it can start, on turn 2 for Antler on Drizzt, and can start attacking, growing that Panther. So turn 2, Evster plays a Rampant Growth, does get 1 mana, brings him up to 4, potentially 5. Hopefully, I think he just needs to ramp up hard to the Crush of Worms and sort of save the game with, 3 6/6s. So Antler does go for the attack, of course, and I think it's going to get blocked just because Evster wants to trigger the Tarmogoyf to grow that Tarmogoyf to maybe a 4/5 in hand. Or maybe Evster decides to play the Wild-Shaped Wolf because he wants to get his Class Quest Druid going. In any case, Antler does, attack, does get blocked, and he does cast the Watch Wolf, the 3/4, as you guys know, pretty much the most OP level 2 card, and is the counter to Colonian Tusker. So there we go. Evster does get the 4/5 Tarmogoyf. Maybe blow it on the blind side, or rather blow the blind side. Nope. I was thinking you could blow the blind side to kill the 2/4 and also stop, therefore it stops the legendaries. But yeah, even if it did, it would have been Drizzt's Herald that Antler just drew. So let's see what Antler does. He could go for something like a Defend with Twinkle, and that way he can still do the attack. But if he does attack, I don't know, maybe he should have just attacked and used a Giant Growth and just attack with the Xander Split. That way, no matter what happens, Xander Split would be having an effective trade, would kill off the Tarmogoyf or the 3/2 Wolf, and still stay on the board. As it is, though, unfortunately, there is no, so I don't think you had to attack with the 3/4. I think that was an obvious, maybe you don't have to kill him, but maybe if you just attack with a Giant Growth. In any case, Xander Split is left over, but the problem is that now Drizzt doesn't have complete board control. And in my experience, I think that's exactly how you to play Drizzt. He has to make everything in board control terms. He can never sort of be, okay, So Evster does give Antler breathing room. He does use a Sylvan Shrine. He's trying to ramp hard to the Crush of Worms. There we go. There's a Giant Growth. He's going to attack. Evster, will you block, or do you see this coming from a mile away? So let's see how Nissa decides to respond. Okay, so he does. There we go. So we do see the Giant Growth. All right. And so now the Panther has grown to 3. However, Evster is, not how Evster. However, Evster, or how Evster is, yeah, he does get the 8 mana. He needs 1 mana more, which will happen thanks to the Sylvan Shrine. He could do the Gorm the Great and the Bark High Growth. There we go. So there's the 9 mana save. And I don't want to call it early, but I think this is going to be game for Evster because we do see the Day of Judgment. And then, yeah, so he does cast Blindside, kills off. We're probably going to see a path to the Exile and maybe the Drizzt's Herald to make the 3/4 Watchwolf another considered, legendary thanks to its ability. I think it is time to Path of Exile, yeah. Because maybe, Evster doesn't have anything. All he has is Day of Judgments or Lava Waves. Maybe he doesn't have Crusher Worms. He does, but I don't think Drizzt knows that. So there we go. We do get the Drizzt's Herald. It does cast on the Watchwolf. We do get the 4 damage on the Gwenhovar Panther. But it's not enough to end the game. And if I'm being honest, Drizzt at turn 5 or 6, Nissa has to be down to like 10 life to really make this an effective match. Otherwise, yeah, we actually see that Nissa's land does proc. Yeah, I think it's just time to Crush of Worms, right? And no matter what Antler does, even if he does like a grudge match with a Giant Growth, it's still going to be able to be blocked. It's going to kill 1/6/6, and so I don't think there's any answers in a typical Drizzt deck that can sort of answer this, because he doesn't have, Yanagu with a full board. Even then, at most, Yanagu can grow, from a 2/2 to a 10/10. And that still doesn't answer the 2 Day of Judgments, like the 2 life insurances that Nissa has in her hand. So you could do Strike with Icing Death, yeah, and do the shields up, right? But if I'm being honest, I don't think it's enough because plus 2 HP will still get killed by it. So I think it's like, Nissa, as we use the term now in Discord, I think Nissa has essentially bricked Antler by just having 3 6/6s on the board. There are no easy answers. Also, Antler's hand, unfortunately, he doesn't have those, like, the Zozu. He doesn't have that 4 mana either. What are we looking at? Like the Inferno, right? That new dragon with the haste. He doesn't have maybe the sneaky guy. The 4 mana sneak. I'm thinking, I forget his name. I apologize, but he's the guy who has, a 3/4 with sneak. Every time he attacks, he gives you a sneak in hand. I think that's what he needs to just go through. Also, Antler doesn't have the, Stoneforge Mystic, maybe to give the 5/6 flying. That would be another way of doing it. So I don't want to call it early, but I do think Nissa has this in the bag. So Nissa is probably just going to go, full-on attack with these 6 ones. Because Antler's going to make some bad blocks, probably the 2/2 and the 3/2 block to keep the 5/6 with the legendary status. But again, he's still not going to be a favorable block, or rather a favorable attack on Drizzt's turn. And now it's sort of Evster's game, at 10 mana, Nissa's time to shine, does play the Wizard Spellbook, draws 2 cards. Maybe it's going to be Jiraga. Okay, so we do see the Hasten again. It's going to be Jiraga Druid, and yeah. And the Birds of Paradise to draw 1 more card. So we know now that Evster's deck has 2 Day of Judgments, 1 Hasten, and 2 Wizard Spellbook. That's 5. And I'm betting anything the Hasten is such a hard tell of the last legendary, which could be the new Strahd, the black and white card. So, okay, so we do see Icing Death, and he's going to attack with the 7/6. Maybe the Grudge match onto the Jiraga Druid. But if I'm being honest, I don't think there is an easy answer. Yeah, just gonna go for the attack. Could, try to force some bad blocks by not using the Grudge match. Okay, yep, decides not to. Will you chump block the 7/6 with the 0/1? I'm almost pretty sure. Yep, maybe just take the 6 damage because it doesn't matter. You have your Barkhide Growth, and if you okay, so it decides not to. So he does take 2 damage. Okay. So there we go, Nissa's at 22, And long game Nisa at 22 versus Drizzt on turn 7 at 22. I think this is Nisa's game. You just have to see how it plays, because even if Nisa doesn't have her end game, having Sign of Ashaya next turn, yeah, okay, decides to use a grudge match. And yep, Hero's Call, what are you gonna get? Maybe Mastermind Lazov, because you can use the sneak and combat. Okay, he gets the Matron Malice, but I think he really needs the Master. Do you go for Matron Malice? I think so late in the game, you need this sneak and hope for something. Yes, he just wants to play. Now, you need the sneak to hope for something, you know, like with like Zozu. Just a big sneak Zozu to take advantage of the Nisa ramp, and also to go through anything like the worms, like a Sign of Ashaya. So Nisa with, you know, 12 mana, probably maybe play a Sign of Ashaya or Day of Judgment. There we go. Yeah, casts Day of Judgment to just sort of, you know, clean the board. And yeah, in Mike Licky's name. And also Nisa does the Sign of Ashaya, becomes a 5/5, blows a mana gem. I think that's the right play, you know, just a chump block in case there's a Zozu. In any case, Antler on turn, what is it, turn 9? The Yawning, or rather turn 8, the Yawning Portal does proc, gives him a Tajik, but I think you just really needed a sneak Zozu to end the game. Maybe Kotho Fed, -2 costs, right? You could cast him for 4 mana, you take the 3 damage, and you maybe give yourself some, well, he's flying, so you can go over the top. But we do know from the previous game, if Antler remembers, fighting Evster on Nisa, we do know that Nisa has Elite Forest Guard and hasn't played one yet. So there's a very high chance, you know, mid-game, late game, that Nisa has one in hand and hasn't played it yet. So I do think it's not exactly a misplay. I just think it was his only option, and that's why it was played. So he does get the deal 3 damage, draw 2 cards. But I think Evster on Nisa, you know, as a long-term player, he has the answer. He has the Elite Forest Guard. Nisa's land does proc, and at this point it's just a sad match, because if I'm being honest, Nisa with more life than a aggro deck has, you know, the advantage also being long game. So yeah, there we go. There's a perfect answer. Plummet. Probably you could do Colonian Tusker just for more board control, right? Because Drizzt on green and white is not known for having Day of Judgment, even though it could, but is not known for it. There we go. Nisa also plays her second level 2 class passive, gives the +1/+1 to the Elite Forest Guard, and does the 5 damage. I think it's just you're going to see a very slow deconstruction of Drizzt playing. So Drizzt could do the Tajik's Legion Edge, and yeah, and do the Giant Growth to maybe sort of, you know, kill the 4/5 Sign of Ashaya. But I don't think it really matters, because Nisa at next turn could do the Sign of Ashaya, but he doesn't know that. Antler doesn't know that, so just trying to deal with the board as it is. So Nisa could still take the 7 damage from Gwenvilvar and still be ahead on life. Yeah, there we go. There's the block, there's the Giant Growth, but I don't think it matters, because next turn Evster can just attack with any of those 4/3s, and I think Antler is forced to block, because if he doesn't, that's going to be 8 damage. It's going to bring Antler down to basically 14 minus 8. I'm not going to do math in a YouTube video, because, you know, I've been known to do bad math. In any case, Evster does play the Wizard Spellbook, draws to you. Do you finally get your end game? Evster, do you prove me right that you have the... Nope, not yet. Okay, so you do play the Wild Shape Run. Nope, you don't. Maybe you can do the Spear Crown Stag to get rid. Nope. Okay, decides to go for Wild Shape Brontosaurus and goes for the attack. You know, usually, if you know what you're going to cast, it might be better to just attack, or rather to attack first. Yeah, rather to attack first. And that way your opponent is left guessing. Do I have my traps? Does my opponent have his traps? And it gives a lot of questioning. So you can usually do that if you know what you're going to play. Attack first, unless you have to play something to do with the board. Keeps everyone guessing. So on turn 10, Antler on Drizzt does get the Yawning Portal to proc a second time versus the Veiled. That's the guy. But I think versus the Veiled needs to come earlier so that he can give Sneak to Tajik. I think that's what is truly lacking. So in any case, I think the 4/3 Colonian Tusker is... No, okay. Decides not to block. I don't think it really matters whether he blocked it or not. yeah, 4-3 is going to block the Tajik. And whether or not the Wild Shape Brontosaurus blocked, it would have taken the damage anyway, so it makes absolutely no difference. Plays the Colonian Tusker, gives him the thing, maybe play Virtus the Veiled, right? Just to, and we can see, you know, because Tajik attacked, it does give all of his minions this turn immune to damage, and thanks to 4 creatures dying, Matron Malice does come back. But if Evster decides to play Day of Judgment, so he's probably going to attack first, and then play Day of Judgment, I think that's game. That's such a, okay, no, never mind. There we go. We do see Strahd, Lord of Ravenholt. And Guz gave him the hasten. There we go, 10 damage. And that is the 1-turn KO with the Nissa. You know, that's such an interesting 1-turn KO. We used to see Nissa combo with the Lava Wave and the 1-turn KO Omnath. And now we see Nissa 1-turn KO with the 10 mana Strahd. What a nice big finish. So very well done, Evster on Nissa. So it's 1-1. Evster having 1-1 and Antler with 1-1. Let's go to game number 3. All right, so game number 3, we will have Evster on Liliana. As you guys know, Liliana is rocking that 3-mana Hellmouth, rather turn 3, 30% chance to proc Hellmouth Cave land that gives +1/+0 to all of her creatures, and it's still again going to be Antler on Drizzt using the Deep Forest Arena, which at turn 5, I believe, has a 30% chance to proc to give +2/+2 and ward. And we do see Evster using the Warlock class. Antler is going to go first and Peer the Dreamer. There is no better turn 1. Actually, there is for Drizzt. It is the combo of 2 Birds of Paradise into Yinaghu. So on turn 1 becomes essentially a what is it? A 6/6? Yeah, a 6/6 trample haste on turn 1, which has no answers and pretty much ends the game starting from turn 1. So Antler doesn't get the perfect draw, so he plays Peer the Dreamer. Evster on turn 1, Liliana is probably, yeah, Pact Bound Closet to get the Sign of Ill Omen to get the level 2 going. But I think Evster has some very good plays. Recycled Grotesque. As you guys know, the 3-mana 6/6 zombie, you do have to sacrifice something, but because the meta right now is Drizzt, and it's not like, you know, Jace, Teferi, and Ral, there's no unsummons, Recycled Grotesque is now good value considering the meta against Drizzt, because Drizzt doesn't have too many unsummons, or rather has no unsummons, doesn't have any creature destruction, right? Only has the Icing Death to stun it and just creatures. So now if you are Liliana, oops, missed attack. Yeah, I don't know why he didn't attack. Shouldn't chat with his opponent. I think chatting with your opponent is sort of, you know, maybe a conflict of interest, but maybe you guys are just talking to see how the match is going because you guys, you know, have such a strong bromance together, so that's okay. In any case, Evster does not attack and just wants to block the board to prevent Antler from having any favorable trades. And so Antler with 3 mana, I think he could do an attack, or he could do Colonian Tusker and then shields up. I think earlier Evster, actually before this turn, he could have attacked because Antler only had 1 mana, and if you attack with, you know, the 2 creatures, you sort of force the shields up right now so that Antler can't use a shields up on his next turn as he is doing now. So I think Evster should have attacked 1 turn earlier and forced shields up, even if it was not a best trade. In any case, he doesn't, so yeah, so Peer the Dreamer does get the value here, and he does get the shields up. So yeah, because we know that Drizzt do normally do shields up, you'd probably want to block the non-legendaries first and trigger all of their traps on the non-legendary, and then block the legendary and kill it, so that way you deprive Drizzt of any sort of legendary creatures. But if you guys can see Antler's hand right now, he is short on creatures, and he does have his land, which could proc, I think, the next turn. So we have to see if Antler can draw creatures, which he's really lacking. So turn 3 of Evster, maybe it's either Sign of Ill Omen or decide to Recycled Grotesque. I think you could sign of Ill Omen the Peer the Dreamer. Nope, decides, okay, blows the mana gem and gets Liliana's Goliath. It's very well done actually, because Antlers, you guys know, on Drizzt doesn't have too many creature removals, only has stun, and only 2 of them from the attack with Icing Death. So Antler does play Stoneforge Mystic. What do you get? So we can't see his choices. He does get a Mystic Weapon. I mean, they're all Mystic Weapons. But do we see? Okay, he does get the +2/+3. I think, if I'm being honest, he would have wanted flying. So he does give Peer the Dreamer, yeah. So that way Peer the Dreamer can survive an attack into Liliana's Goliath. And he does attack with everything. I'm pretty sure the 4/2 Liliana's Goliath will block the 4/3. And the 6/5 does get chump blocked and just eat the 2 damage. But if I'm being honest, I think he I think Drizzt really needed flying. As you guys know, Liliana has no real good anti-flying. And the way that Liliana built the deck with the, Hellmouth Cave, you're not going to play a 4-mana Peafowl, and maybe you're only going to have, okay, so we do see Liliana splash blue. So it looks like it's the very aggressive Liliana deck with the Limrith. As you guys know, Limrith 3/1/1/4 flying. When it does attack, it mills 2 cards from yourself. And that way it can sort of combo well with a Zombify. So if we do see the Limrith, I think that also means we might see Unsummons in Evster's deck. And yeah, so Liliana, we also might see the Arcane Flight. So again, super aggressive, just like Drizzt's and, Chandra's and Angrath and Nahiri's. In any case, Antler's land does proc, unfortunately, but he has no creatures. Oh, and now Evster's land procs. That's going to be 11 +3. That's 14 plus another 3. That's going to be 17 damage. I think that's game-ending damage. So turn 5, essentially, the game has been finished and pretty much decided, because neither Antler nor Evster is having those board wipes. Really Antler needs it now, but green-white aggressive Drizzt is not going to have any board wipes. So yeah, I think it's just trade value, and that's Drizzt's strength. So we do see the Worm's Wake. He probably, okay, so we do see an Inferno, but yeah, how will you deal with that 11/1 and 7/6, right? You probably have to be forced to block the 11/1, and so the 7/6 is going to go through. So you probably have to do Icing Death and maybe stun the 7/6, and the 11/1 cannot block, so it just kills the 3/2. I think that's the only answer that you can really go for. You could do the Armadillo Cloak as well, but I think you'd somehow want to maximize its heal. So strike with Icing Death, there we go. It does, and I think, yeah, Evster's going to block with the 3/2. It does stun the Psycho Grotesque. Will you block Evster? I'm pretty sure you will block. Or you can decide not to, and that way you can force Antler to block on the next turn. Yeah, there we go. So this way, it forces Antler to block the 11/1, and this way, I think it's a guaranteed 7 damage. Oops, well no, he's stunned, so it's not going to be, but yeah, it's a guaranteed 3 damage. And this way, it's just very effective for Evster to end the game. There's a little bit too much pressure, although Antler could potentially come back, buffing Inferno with the Armadillo Cloak if he does somehow manage to get to that mana, and he can still deal with the Recycled Grotesque. But I think the value from playing Recycled Grotesque has no real answers in any of the Drizzt decks. It can only be stunned twice. It just has to be answered by creature value with the shields up, with the giant growth. So if I'm being honest, I think the meta has truly adapted to the aggro with just more aggro decks. So the problem with that, though, we can see is that there's no, card draw like we saw in the Nisa with the double Wizards Spellbook. There's no card draw. So now players will always be running out of cards and just sort of top decking. And we do see Evster with the Searing Chains to sacrifice a creature on board, right? And still draw a card. But I think by and large, we are seeing a lot of players going to run these aggro decks as the meta is revolved now around Drizzt. And so now we evolve to sort of have more value creatures on board to just answer Drizzt. Because Drizzt sort of, doesn't really hard counter, but very strongly counters, things like Jace, things like Teferi, and so those and things like Ral. So those planeswalkers are known for the unsummons, and that's why by and large, Recycled Grotesque was not usually played. But now that the meta is revolved around aggro and we don't see those long-term unsummon guys, I think Recycled Grotesque and sort of these aggro decks is a very good answer now to Drizzt, and I think that's what we're seeing here today. So Evster, yeah, probably Merchant of Death. Maybe you're going to, there we go, Searing Chain, so draw 2 cards, right? Merchant of Death, as you guys know, it's a 2/1, and when it dies, you draw a card, and it does 1 damage and drains 1 life, there we go. And he does get another Recycled Grotesque, might as well attack with everything, and there is forced to block unfavorably. It doesn't even kill the Grotesque, there we go. That's the maximization of the creature value when you're fighting against Drizzt, and does have the Limrith, and the Limrith will probably get a big boost when Limrith attacks because there are several cards in the graveyard. So I don't think Antler has any answers. He didn't draw any creatures. He only has 3 spells and he can only summon. It's been an honor, he says. Evster, do you respond, or you just attack with the full force of your zombies and Limrith? Yeah, so let's see Limrith in play. There we go. Limrith gets plus how many cards? Okay, so he does mill himself 2, and he gets plus 1 damage for every 5 cards. So he gets, okay, plus 1 damage, all right. In any case, there we go. And just like that, that's how you can win against the Drizzt meta. Very well done, Evster. So I think we can sort of conclude that, the meta is revolved around Drizzt, but we do see a lot of the time the players now with the more aggressive decks, the decks where you start having to, basically just sort of top deck from turn 7. So we now see players using the old graveyard, or not even the old graveyard, but we do see Hellmouth Cave. We just want to have the value right now. We got the Arcane Flight in those decks, with the Liliana. So we just want to see games end within 4 to 7 turns, and so that's what we're seeing. So very well done, Evster. So you go on, as you know, to the next round. A good try, Antler. We are still going to continue with the tournament. And yeah, if you guys like what you saw or heard today, please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.